The screech of cold metal vibrating through the air mingled with the wind echoing along the Bulgarian coastline, blending with the hum of the sea to cloak the set in a shroud of tension. In the last moments of summer, despite the sweltering heat of August, there was an inexplicable chill in the air. As the sun slowly sank westward, the sky shifted between gold and burnt orange. The horizon seemed as though it had been drawn with fire, but beneath that riot of color, in the shadow of the metal, nothing felt peaceful. The harsh gusts of wind, combined with the deep rumble of the sea, seemed to signal an invisible threat. The set was built around an old truck, a massive pile of rusted steel. It was worn, damaged, but undeniably impressive. Its cabin, heavy as if carrying the weight of time, its steering wheel murmuring the whispers of past accidents with every turn. Everyone was in place: cameramen, lighting technicians, stunt doubles, directors. But in their eyes, there was a shared expression, the tense silence of waiting on the edge of the unknown. Jason Statham walked towards the center of the set. His eyes were focused ahead, but his steps were heavy and deliberate, as if listening to the vibrations of the ground beneath him. His body language was strong, yet at that moment, no one could know what was going through his mind. Perhaps it was an instinct, or a blend of intuition and acting, or maybe a feeling that the scenes he had done thousands of times before now carried a weight of their own. The director's voice boomed through the megaphone. "Last rehearsal. Jason, if you're ready, we're ready." A small ripple passed through the crowd. Cameras positioned. Sound technicians adjusted their headsets. Jason, without saying a word, continued walking towards the truck. He was more than just an actor at that moment. He was like a warrior. He opened the cabin door, the creak of the heavy hinges momentarily drowned out by the wind. As he stepped inside, the cabin felt like a temple, holding the ghosts of the past. He took a deep breath and sat in the seat. When he placed his hands on the steering wheel, it felt like a warning passed through the cold metal. But he said nothing. He buckled his seatbelt, gripped the gear stick, and locked his eyes on the sky and the sea where the hill met the horizon. The scene was simple on paper. Drive the truck down the hill, stop at a certain point, and then quickly exit the vehicle. After that, explosions, action, escape. But life didn't stick to scripts. Everything was perfectly timed. The engine roared to life, and the massive truck, like a metal beast, groaned as it began to move forward. Jason's gaze didn't change. There was no fear, no hesitation on his lips. But deep inside, an instinct, something innate, whispered that something was wrong. The truck began to glide down the hill, moving as planned for a few seconds. Jason gripped the wheel tightly, his eyes focused on the road, his body alert to the vibrations. But then, a slight tremor, a seemingly insignificant shake that startled him for a moment. He pressed his foot on the brake pedal. Nothing. He couldn't make sense of it. He pressed again. The same feeling. The brakes weren't responding. In that moment, time seemed to bend. His pupils dilated. His breath caught in his chest. The hum in his ears grew louder, mixing with the screams from outside. "Jason, check the brakes!" came the cry from the radio. But it was too late. The truck was already out of control. A massive weight was speeding toward the sea. It wasn't stopping. In fact, it was gaining speed with every passing second. The wheels tore through the asphalt, the engine groaning with every movement. Jason tried to turn the wheel, but the metal no longer obeyed him. Down below, at the edge of the shore, the Black Sea waited with its eyes locked on him. It was as if its depths were calling him in. Cameramen panicked, retreating. Some dropped their equipment and ran. The crew froze. Some didn't know what to do, others simply collapsed where they stood, watching. There were only screams, panic, and the repeated cry of, "Stop it!" But nothing could be done. This was no script. This was a real-life battle for survival that would be remembered in cinema history. As the truck reached the end of the ramp, the sun had completely sunk into the horizon. The color between gold and blood red painted the surface of the sea. The depths were dark, mysterious, but there was a steel monster speeding toward them. And within that monster, a man face to face with death. The truck, with a massive weight, flew off the edge of the ramp. Gravity didn't pause, not for a second. The sky went silent. Everything slowed down. Everyone held their breath. The giant vehicle hovered for a brief moment in the air. Then, at the point where the sky and sea met, it crashed into the Black Sea with a deafening explosion. Boom! Water shot up into the sky. Foam reached for the heavens. The truck disappeared underwater within seconds. Only the echoes and fear remained. The set fell into silence. Eyes were locked on the surface of the water. No one moved. "Jason," someone whispered. "He was in that truck." Time seemed to freeze. There was no ripple on the surface of the water. Everyone's thoughts echoed the same question. Is it really over? Then a slight ripple in the foam, and then a shadow in the water. The shadow grew, took shape. Then a head, a pair of arms, a body. Jason Statham emerged from the water like a man insisting on living. His face was covered in water, but his eyes held that familiar look. Stubbornness, resistance, life. He was out of breath. He began swimming slowly toward the shore. Each stroke felt like a miracle. Finally, when he reached the shore, he planted his hands into the sand and dropped to his knees. The crew rushed to him. Tears, screams, silence, all in one place. Some collapsed to the ground, crying. Others were still in shock. Jason lifted his head. As the water dripped off him, his eyes scanned the crowd. Everyone was looking at him, a hero who had survived. And at that moment, as if nothing had happened, these words slipped from his lips. "I guess we don't need to reshoot this scene." Laughter erupted. Quiet, exhausted, hesitant laughter. But behind those smiles, the truth remained. What had happened that day wasn't just an accident. That day, death came, waited, but then left. And everyone knew by just a few seconds, this story could have had a very different ending.